Yo, good afternoon. How you doing? This is your coach Renz, and today is one day after the MLK celebration for 2018. And this day is probably more impactful for me to this year than it was any other year. Mainly because I thought about Dr. King totally different than I've pretty much think about him in most occasions. The thing that was different is this. Dr. King is mostly remembered for a man having a dream. He's mostly remembered for helping to bring about the Civil Rights Bill. He's most remembered for bringing about integration in America between the minorities and the white Caucasian culture. He's generally known for that. He's known to be assassinated for those efforts. And many people gave speeches about having a dream and still having a dream. But I think what they failed to realize, and what I have always realized for a very long time, but just really came to accept it, is that Martin Luther King Jr. did not die for a dream. He died because he woke up from the nightmare. You see, he had a dream that people will be graded, that they will be judged by their character and not the color of their skin. If we were all peeled, we would all be the same. There would be no difference between black, white, or Asian, or any other group, because we would all be the same if the skin was peeled back. He had that dream that he spoke about at the Washington Monument. But that's not why he got killed. That's not why they murdered him. He was murdered because Dr. King began to realize that the dream that he had was really a nightmare. That if he continued in this process, that the African in America, the blacks in America, whichever title you want to go by, that we would end up in a nightmare, to which that dream is being realized today. That nightmare is present. You see, some of you are going to disagree with me right now. You may cut off the video. You may say I don't know what I'm talking about. And that's cool. But I want you to look at this historically. Historically, when any group that had been oppressed by another group and they remained connected in country, it has taken that group much longer for them to find their self-determination. Usually self-determination of a oppressed group only occurs when they relieve themselves of the outside influences of those who oppress them, because those who oppress them will continue to oppress in other ways, and those who were oppressed will believe that they have achieved some level of freedom when the freedom is still a fallacy. I'll give you historical proof in just a minute. You see, in Dr. King's last speeches, he was no longer speaking of I have a dream, but was speaking in the reality of self-determination for minorities in America, especially black people in America. He was speaking about creating and gaining those benefits. He was speaking of how when Lincoln freed the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation, when the Civil War was over, the 40 acres and a mule that was promised to the almost 2 million Africans in America at that time, when instead of those reparations being paid, what the American government did was to give land grants to white people who were in lack, to go out and take over land, to go out and become farmers, and then paid them to teach and taught them how to farm, and even to this day pay farmers not to grow. He spoke on that. I published a video about that on my Facebook earlier. But he talked about those kinds of things. He talked about bringing the case to the United Nations. He talked about going further than Lyndon B. Johnson wanted him to go. And if you know anything about Johnson, Johnson was a domineering figure. He hated when people tried to press upon him what he has to do. So Johnson wasn't necessarily going to take that line down. The thing is, historically, when Haiti freed themselves in 1804, because they kicked out the Canadian white people, they were self-determining for a while, but then Canada came back, America came back, and imposed their own will on Haiti, which has stifled their growth. But when India gained their freedom from England, from Great Britain. The British influence was still there. The oppressor had left, but what they had left behind and the controls that they left created this caste system that slowed down India's growth. It is only in the recent 20, 30, 40 years that the caste system has been eliminated, but it was outlawed a while back, but the caste system is still there. The mentality of the caste system is still there, which is why India is still struggling, but they are making moves to change that. And one of those reasons because India owns its own land. Haiti can make those changes because they own their own land. It takes the right type of leadership. Many African nations have only been free for 30, 40, 50 years, and they've only been free from colonialism for that time frame. But the reason why they are able, and some have advanced further than others, is because they are within and own their own land. But they still suffer from a colonial mentality. They still suffer from the separation from the light skin, dark skin, from the aristocratic black people in the house, black people, to the field black people. They still suffer from that, and it may take more generations for that to change, but they are and will progress much quicker because they are within their own land. When the Chinese kicked out the Japanese, the Chinese were in their own land, and they've been self-determining ever since. When Japan lost in World War II, they maintained their own land, their own government, and although they had the influence of America, they still have been self-determining. When Germany was lost World War I and World War II, they still were Germany. They still were Prussia. They still were able to maintain their own land, their own identity, so they came out of their despotism. Italy, Mussolini, the same situation. They were able to come out of it. Even in the Soviet Union, when it broke up, each piece have been able to find their own sovereignty, so they've maintained their own self-determination. The problem with the black person in America is that we have not been able to maintain our own sovereignty. You see, at first we were able to maintain our own sovereignty out of force because there were certain laws in place that caused separation of the people. And Dr. King, some say, realized that the nightmare of integration was that the black in America was going to lose what little self-determination that we had. You see, when we weren't allowed to shop at the white shops, we created Black Wall Street in Kansas. When we weren't allowed to eat at the white restaurants, we created the Black Wall Streets in South Carolina. I'm from Marietta, Georgia. And when we weren't able to shop at some of the shops on the square, in Marietta Square, according to my grandparents, we created our own Black Wall Street on Lawrence Street in Marietta. So because of a forced situation, when we had a separation while integrated, separation while surrounded, we were able to create our own communities that were self-determining, where you can get the same education as anybody else in your community, where you can then become a business owner, become a doctor, become a lawyer, where you can do these things and uplift yourself because the community supported those businesses because they had to. Integration destroyed that cooperation, destroyed that sense of community. This is the nightmare that the dreamer woke up to, that he realized and began to make changes. His speeches changed. His tonality changed. I was watching many of the speeches, and the look in his eye changed. He had a new direction. Started meeting with Elijah Muhammad. Started meeting with other people that he hadn't previously been meeting with in order to start making a different move. And that move ultimately got him martyred. Although he expressed he had no desire to be martyred. But what are we looking at today? Today, we're looking at a people who have lost their ability of self-determination. That our ability, our thought process of self-determination is based on a Eurocentric capitalism of America. It's the truth. But we're looking for self-determination based on a system that does not want you to be self-determined based on you, but based on what their opinion is. And as long as that is in place, as long as we continue in that vein, there will never be a Black Wall Street. There will never be Black communities that rise up from the muck and the mire. There will never be a strong political force of unification through Black people. There will never be a respect given to the mass of Black people. You see, as an individual Black person, you can get respect. You can make the money and they will somewhat respect you. You can make the money and you can move into neighborhoods where the police will somewhat respect you because they know that you can get that good lawyer and put them on their heels. You will get some levels of respect. I've operated my business in Decatur, Georgia, and I've operated my business in Cobb County, in Marietta, and I've operated in Alpharetta. There is a huge distinction. There is a huge difference of how I was treated and how I've been treated by the authorities in Decatur compared to how I have been and am treated in Marietta and Alpharetta. I'm treated much better in Marietta and Alpharetta than I ever was in Decatur. In Decatur, the expectation of a Black man in Decatur is that you do not have the capabilities of a lawyer. You may not be intelligent. You may not be able to converse. You may not be able to go into the court and plead your case. But compared to Marietta, they don't know. They don't know who you know when you're in Marietta and Alpharetta. They don't know your financial stature when you're in Marietta and Alpharetta. So a little bit more respect is given. Just a little bit now. Not a whole lot, but a little bit. Still not the same. Still not the same as the white guy next to you or the Asian guy that's next to you. And you have to question, why do they respect the Asian guy? Because the Asian guy has community. The Asian guy has built a community that surrounds and protects himself in the midst of a Eurocentric community. And that is the self-determination that they've created because they created a power block of community. The Spanish in Atlanta are creating a power block of community, and in many other states are creating their power blocks of community. Other groups have created their power blocks of community. Blacks in America have been here for a very long time, but have not created that power block. We had it, but integration destroyed it. It is the nightmare of the dream. Until there is a coming together of all types of the Black clergy, Christian, Islam, conscious, whatever, Black Israelites, whatever, it doesn't matter, until the spiritual community comes together, until the business community comes together, and the political community comes together, we will not see any levels of self-determination, because we can plead for the school systems to teach equally. We can plead for the police department to treat all of us equally. We can plead for all these things. We can march, we can beg. But until it is demanded by the force of finances, until it is demanded by a true leadership in the ballot box, until it is demanded by the clergy to support the businesses within your community, within your congregations, until it is demanded that the businesses hire the people within your community, until it is demanded that the consumer shops with the businesses in their community that is putting back into their communities, we will not have that respect. We will not have that self-determination. You will not be able to determine what your schools teach. You will not be able to say that our schools teach AP courses just as well as the schools in the so-called white side of town. Until that happens, self-determination will be missing. And without self-determination, the black community in America will always find themselves suffering. You would think that white America would understand how they are tethered to every community within the United States. You cannot have a sick person in your house and not expect the rest of the house to get sick. We're all in the house. We're all in the same house. And if one person in the house is sick, that disease will flourish throughout the house. This is flu season. Most of the time when my grandmother was raising a whole family of people, if someone was sick, you stay at your house. Don't come to where everyone is located. If you got sick, you had to be separated until you got well. This is what Minister Farrakhan most recently spoke about, that usually we separate the sick person until they become well, and then they integrate with the rest of the family. The blacks in America were fine. Needed some changes, needed some fair treatment, but as soon as we integrated, we got sick. We became ill. We became confused. We began to leave our communities. We began to leave those who hadn't had the opportunity, those who leave the schools that we could have built better. We began to leave all those things to go cozy up next to those who oppressed us. And as if it was a sign to say that you will take my money. You will take my children into your school and adopt them to your trainings. You will allow me to be like you. Instead of saying that we have everything that is in that Declaration of Independence. We have everything that is in that Constitution. And we will demand it. And we will put it in our community. I am a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a business owner, but I would not leave the community to which I have built my business on. I'm not going to leave the clients that have built my business. When that happened, we lost our way. We lost our identity. We got sick. We need to get well. This is no indictment towards anybody. I am not calling for separation of black people and white people in America. I'm not calling for 40 acres and a mule reparations. It's never going to happen. Stop screaming. It's never going to happen. But what I'm calling for is for us to start creating our own self-determination by supporting your community. Now, if your community is in Marietta, support your community in Marietta. If your community is on the north side, the east side, the west side, the south side, support your community on whatever side you're on. But at the end of the day, support your community, and then you will begin to fulfill the reality of what Dr. King died for. The reality of what he died for. This message has been a little bit longer than I anticipated, but always you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable.